Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to tonight's broadcast on GNN, April 18th, 2007. Tonight we're going to be taking a closer look at the Supreme Court case that has recently been held, Gonzales v. Cahart. This highly controversial case has been spurring a lot of conversation and arguments, especially among women. Based on this specific case, is judicial review in the best interest of our country? And if you don't know, you must not watch often, but judicial review is how the judiciary branch interprets the Constitution and their final decision as to what is constitutional. But first, we'll begin with the basic facts and a brief history on the case provided to you by Gwen Towers from the Washington Post. Good evening, Gwen. So this case all started in 2000 when Nebraska attempted to pass a law banning partial birth abortions. Before we continue, could you please explain to the audience who may not know, what is a partial birth abortion? Well, it is what it sounds like. The fetus is delivered part of the way and then killed, usually by some kind of damage to the skull. So most of the time, the fetus is viable to live outside the womb when the procedure takes place. The state of Nebraska tried to ban this specific procedure in 2000. However, the ban was determined unconstitutional because there were no medical exceptions for the mother's health. Later in 2003, the federal government passed the Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act. This was the first ban ever passed that rid of a specific abortion procedure. But shortly thereafter, lower courts in California, Nebraska, and New York all deemed the law as unconstitutional, because they claimed that the law was the same as the one in Nebraska that they had attempted to pass in 2000. That is when President Bush took the case to the Supreme Court. They decided on a 5-4 ruling to keep the ban. You said that Nebraska declined the original law in 2000 because there were no health exceptions for the mother. Could you explain that further? That actually is all a result of Roe v. Wade, a landmark case in 1973. This is a case that gave women in the United States the right to an abortion. Before the case, abortions were illegal and women had no choice in the matter. And what was the new law that they decided on? They decided that in the first trimester of pregnancy that women have the right to an abortion. After the first trimester, it is the state's right to regulate abortions and set limitations as long as there are health exceptions for the mother. So the reason the partial birth ban in 2000 didn't pass is because it was lacking in one of those health exceptions? That is correct. Didn't the ban in 2003 have those exceptions? No, it did not, which is why it was challenged by the states. Alright, thank you, Gwen. Now we're going to talk with both the prosecution and the defense to see both views on the case. Welcome U.S. Attorney General Alberto Gonzales of the prosecution.
Good evening, Gabby. Thank you.
So, Mr. Gonzales, please explain your point of view on the case.
I supported the ban on partial birth abortions. Of course, as are most debates about abortion, a lot of my reasons were based on moral beliefs. This is taking away the life of an innocent human being, especially in these cases of partial birth abortions. Because most of the time the fetus is viable, meaning that it would be alive outside of the mother's womb, the procedure is very gruesome, and I can't help but think there must be some procedure out there that is even a little more humane. This is murder.
But you cannot just take those arguments to the court. Those are just opinions, right?
Correct, but in reality the ban was constitutional because this is not taking away rights to abortion. It's just a specific procedure. The procedure is not used often anyway, so there must be an alternative. Only 5,000 out of 1.3 million babies that have been taken by abortions have been killed by this specific procedure. There's never a good reason for partial birth abortions if other methods can be used.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzales. We'll now hear from the other side of the case, the defense attorney, Janet Krebs. Welcome, Janet.
Hi, thank you.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your arguments in the case?
I sure can. The prosecution argued that these procedures are never medically necessary, but that's not true. Doctors I have talked to said that there are medical problems that can develop in the mother after the first trimester of pregnancy.
Really? What are some of these problems?
The most common are heart failure, high blood pressure, and diabetes.
And those can certainly be dangerous.
Most definitely. This case is also like the golden ticket to place other bans on abortion.
What do you mean by that?
If we let this case go without the health exception, what is to stop the court from making other cases just like it? It's like chipping away at the rights that were granted to women in Roe v. Wade. It's just a gateway. And to state the obvious, this ban didn't include a health exception for the mother. And a law established by Roe v. Wade in the 70s specifically states that there must be a medical exception.
Interesting. Thank you, Mrs. Krebs.
My pleasure.
Finally, we're going to hear from our Supreme Court justices. First, we will hear from Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy.
Good evening, Gabby.
Good evening. So, Mr. Kennedy, you were with the majority rule, correct?
That's right. The court ruled 5-4.
What influenced you to make this decision?
I thought it would potentially protect women from using abortion methods that they don't know a lot about, since this procedure poses a lot of potential health risks for the mother. Also, because of the Roe v. Wade decision, the government cannot completely be rid of abortions, but we still have the right to regulate authority and hope that it will prevent some women from ending their pregnancies.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Now we'll speak with Justice Ruth Ginsburg. Good evening.
Hello.
So, you voted with the minority?
Yes, that's right.
What was your reasoning?
This ban cannot be understood as anything other than an effort to chip away at the right that's been declared again and again by court. As the defense said, it's just a way to start ridding of more and more rights that women have.
So, you do not agree that this procedure is rare enough that banning it wouldn't make a difference?
No, obviously not. And this ban won't save the lives of any unborn children if that's what you're so worried about. Women will just find another procedure to use.
Thank you, Justice Ginsburg. Now that we have all the needed information, let's ask the question we've all been dying to discuss. Based on this case, is judicial review in the best interest of our country? You know, Gabby, I'm going to have to say no to this one. I don't believe 5-4 decisions are what we want in the courtroom. Most of the time, when they come to a conclusion, 4 people go to the right and 4 people swing to the left, and there's one person left in the middle that could go either way. That means the whole law lies in the hands of one person's decision. How could that one person possibly know what's right for the entire country? A 7-2 decision sounds a lot more solid and reassures that we're confident we know the bill is in the best interest of the country. I see. And do you think that who is on the court at the time of the decisions has any significance? Oh, that's a huge factor. Just take, for example, what I said earlier about the ban in Nebraska that was shut down. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor was on the court then, and she was a huge women's rights activist, so she, without question, said no to the ban. In this 2007 case, she was no longer on the court. She was replaced by a justice who was appointed by President Bush. How does the fact that the president appointed him relate? Well, Bush is a Republican. He's a believer in pro-life, and he does not support abortions. So, he appointed a justice that would share the same views as him, therefore influencing those close 5-4 decisions. To prove my point, Justice Alito, the man that took O'Connor's place, voted with the majority that the ban was constitutional. I believe, as well as many others, that if O'Connor was still on the court, this case would have swung the other way, and the bill would not have sustained. Very thoughtful. Some food for thought for the road. Alright, sadly that's all we have time for tonight, folks. Tune in next week for another special episode on GNN. This is your host, Gabby Deacock, wishing you a good night.